everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go. Everyone, welcome to Overtime with Coach Blue and Athletic Director Marissa.
Hello.
We survived our Halloween party last night.
Yeah.
The office didn't, but we did. Right?
Yeah.
There's still some remains of the festivities last night. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and hanging out and having some fun, being able to celebrate Sober October, as they say, right?
Absolutely. It was so fun.
Yeah. But hey, we are in full swing of a lot more on the horizon when it comes to what I guess the essence of what Addict to Athlete provides and what we do. And that is a lot of service. And we are right now accepting applications for our Project ELF. This is a Sub for Santa type experience. So if you know someone that might be struggling, having some difficult times with finances, we'd really love to hear from you.
Living in the Wasatch Front area of Utah.
That's
please.
probably key because I know we go kind of nationally, even globally. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'd love to
Contact us. We need to get the applications out and returned by November 5th, November 10th.
Yeah. But nonetheless, check out addicttoathlete.org. You're going to find all kinds of content on there, from how the team is organized right down to our merchandise shop. Even resources that you can use for your own recovery. Addict to Athlete is a program that's been designed not just to have influence here in the good old city of Provo, Utah, Orem, Utah. It's meant to be kind of expanded and shared with you wherever you are. So jump on addicttoathlete.org. You'll find a lot of resources. Right up to our recovery coach program.
Yeah.
If you want to jump on there and check it out, you can train to become a certified Addict to Athlete recovery coach. Open a chapter of Addict to Athlete, or just for your own information on how to give back to your community. So
absolutely,
jump on there and check. But while we're also giving some kudos and thanks, we got to give thanks to our Patreon subscribers. It's because of you that this podcast gets a little bit further each week, and so we're grateful that you guys have allowed yourself to donate to Team Addict to Athlete for this cause, and we like to celebrate these folks in their support of the team. Marissa, who we got?
All right. We want to thank our super fans: Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Brock Ellerman, Christy Case, Kel Lim, and Faith Davis.
Thank you.
Thank you to our super fans. Then we want to thank our rookies: Earl Dyer, Wendell Wood, Brad Waldron, Ron and Dee Loesch from up in the Big Sky, Montana, and Sione and Mary Inuk. Thank you to our rookies, and thank you to our pro level is Justin Robbins, and our champion level Patreon, Shad and Freya Robinson and Andrew Baird. Thank you, guys.
My heavens.
We could not do what we do without you. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon, please check out patreon.com/addicttoathlete. It's a fundraising platform. There's bonus episodes, bonus gear, swag that you guys get from us, but it also gives back to us so that we can help continue this podcast.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. If you guys can listen really close, really intent, you might even hear our Patreon subscriber Sione out there, because he's out there utilizing some of our space, so that's good. But athletes, we got some good questions, and some of these are rollovers from last week's show that we didn't get to read on air, and I really wanted to kick this off because there's some good content here. And both of these folks have said, "Hey, I don't mind submitting the question. Just don't give my name."
All right.
I'm like, that's totally fine. That's what we do here. The first one, Marissa, it says, "I'm early in recovery. What do you believe the foundation of recovery should focus on?" It's a good question because, a lot of times when you get into treatment, you get into recovery, you get kind of shotgun blasted with information. And you kind of start building before you even set a foundation, right?
Yeah.
Foundation needs to be set so that you can build upon it. It's represented in our logo, the Roman numeral 2. Once you have 2 of those columns, right, 1 and then 2, that begins to set a foundation where you can build on. Yeah. And so it's a great question. And when seeking recovery, I would say that integrity is probably the most crucial foundation for a lot of reasons. What do you think about integrity, like the structure of integrity? Why is that so important?
I think it's really important. In fact, as I was just hearing that question, I thought, first and foremost, it's got to be honesty. And so when you say integrity, those really often go hand in hand. When I remember years ago researching integrity and learning that the root word of integrity is integer.
Integer.
So it's going to a math term, which I don't like math. You don't like math.
I might fade away.
That doesn't mean you need to shut down.
Kick some knowledge here.
But if you go to the number line, an integer is any whole and complete number.
Right.
So why does integrity go along with integer and a whole and complete number? Because if you have integrity, you're a whole and complete person, no matter who you are around, whether you're by yourself, whatever. You're not a fraction of a person. You're not, a decimal of a person, acting a certain way with one person and a certain way with someone else and taking pieces of other people. You act like yourself at all times.
Yeah.
In all places. And that's what integrity is being able to be that honest, complete self.
Yeah, I love that. I love that principle. And so if you're thinking about it, look at the whole and complete part of what this is. Because if you have this as a foundation, imagine what you can build upon, right?
Because if you're coming into recovery, whether it's treatment or just yourself, your family, if you can be honest, if you can be open about what you've been doing, where you're at, how you're doing, if you're struggling, gain some of that self-awareness to have some integrity, that is, I think, the strongest thing you can have in being able to move forward.
And I love what you said, because I remember Coach Gilwick's explaining this to me about what kind of person you are when no one's watching. This is the ultimate form of integrity, because only you and probably God know what's going on inside the mind, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at some of the principles within integrity, I would say the first one, like you said, is the trustworthiness, right?
Yeah.
Displaying integrity builds trust with others. That's just a given. When you demonstrate honesty, like you just said, and reliability, and kind of an emotionally ethical approach to your sobriety, people are more likely to believe in your intentions and support you in your recovery.
Absolutely.
But if you are not trustworthy and you hold that back, it's going to be real difficult for people to get behind you when you need them, because what they've seen is this push to a certain point and then a withdrawal, and a push to a certain point and then a withdrawal. And it's like, that's not having integrity, not even close.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The next one is personal accountability. And this is super important too, because integrity involves taking responsibility. We just talked about this.
Yeah. For
your actions, acknowledging any mistakes or wrongdoings, and demonstrating a commitment to personally grow from it and a willingness to make amends. And that accountability in and of itself is essential for any recovery process.
Yeah.
But this is a hard thing too, because personal accountability doesn't mean that you keep having the issue and then just promptly admitting it, right? I mean, that's great, but like, if you keep doing these things over and over and over, are you truly establishing a sense of integrity, or are you using? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's hard for some people, and I understand that, but personal accountability is hard.
People may have slips and, looking at that, but really you have to get to a point where if you know better, you do better. Mm-hmm. And not that we're saying no one can make mistakes, because that happens.
That's granted. It's going to happen.
But if there's at least some progress over time, like 3 steps forward, 1 back, 3 steps forward, 1 back.
There's still movement.
But how often is that 1 back? Is it over and over and over? What are you going to do?
Exactly. Well, it goes into the third principle of consistency, and the word that everyone hates, discipline.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, listeners, recovery requires consistency and discipline to overcome challenges and maintain process. Mm-hmm. And I love what you talked about with the consistency, right? The commitment to consistency, meaning that you're having experiences and you're repeating them for positive outcomes. Yeah. Right? It's like, you're showing up for a job. You're showing up for family relationships. You're showing up, for life when you used to hide. The consistency of you showing up and being present, that starts creating some discipline.
And I think oftentimes you look at recovery and you often look at the big, giant things you have to do, when it really comes down to those little, small things that you can do consistently. Getting up on time every day. Making your bed every day, getting in a workout, getting to work. I mean, sometimes it's just the little things that slowly add up to becoming habits, and then they start affecting the big things. And if you can't do the little things right, it's really difficult to do the big things right. So quit looking at the big things. It's a little overwhelming. It's a little much sometimes.
Yeah, can be.
And just look at like the little things, like you're saying, just when you commit to something, you follow through, you show up, and just doing that little stuff every day.
Yeah. And discipline's kind of an interesting thing. It means that you're willing to be a disciple to your recovery, meaning like a student, because discipline basically boils down to teaching, right?
Yeah.
We look at it,
teacher.
We look at it sometimes as a negative thing because it's been termed as a consequence to a certain behavior.
Yeah.
Like you're being disciplined. You are, in the essence of they want you to learn something.
Yeah. Like, have you ever had a teacher that was teaching, not just punishing?
Yeah.
And that's what you want discipline to be, is that you become a student in learning from somebody who's teaching and supporting and helping, not somebody that's just punishing.
Absolutely. With that goes along another principle of transparency and openness, right? Being open and transparent about your struggles, your vulnerability, and your progress kind of fosters a supportive environment. But this means that you are forecasting before the storm actually rains on you. Does that make sense? It means like you're open enough to say, man, I've got this on my plate. It's heavy. I don't know what to do with it. What do you think? And the reason why I think most people don't allow themselves to be open and transparent is because you might get some feedback that you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And that may be something like, well, using is not an option, so take it off the plate, right? We talked about this on the Agents of Recovery not too long ago about how it's not an option. Like, take it off your plate. But if you leave that little portion on your plate that, I could go get high, or I could go, get this prescription or whatever, well, then you're always going to feast off that.
Yeah.
But if you take it out of your arsenal.
Yeah. Even a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the hard part, right? Being transparent about it means you're going to have to probably face some stuff that kind of hurts. And this is the second question we'll get into in a bit. But what do you think holds people back from that transparency and openness, when it comes to laying the foundation of integrity?
I think oftentimes it's just the fear of failure. It's the fear of, I don't, and hope that you're going to do better, and maybe you're not going to slip up more and more. But to be able to come out and say, hey, I'm struggling, leaves the option that you could fall, you could struggle. But that's okay. That's part of growth, is being able to talk about it and share it. And if you just hold on to it too tight and hold it to yourself, that's when people slip and fall on their own, and just slide. And then they're just hidden, and no one can even be there to help you when you're struggling. Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of people that have had a difficult time with this, even with the pornography group that I'm running right now. The transparency and openness of a potential relapse or situational behavior, something that pops up, is so hard because they're worried about the response from the people that they care about, right? Like
not letting family down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got some good time under your belt and you start to have these feelings. If you start being transparent and open, they might come call into question maybe, your motives, or, they might freak them out and scare them. So to alleviate some of that, people try to
keep it to
themselves, right? And I say this all the time. Try holding back diarrhea with willpower, right? If you're not transparent and say, find me a bathroom, it's coming out. That's disgusting. I get it. But that's the premise there, right? You've got to be vocal. You've got to be open, and you have to be transparent. That's one of the things I think helped me so much, is that I became an open book. And it was scary because that means I had to put emotional trust and become vulnerable to some folks. But it's helped me in the long run, right?
And I think oftentimes people, because of past failures, look at themselves as, I am a failure, so I don't even want to say it out loud that, this is coming, because you go back to number 3, you haven't been consistent. You haven't been being disciplined. And the more you do that with little things, you're going to build faith in yourself. And that's, I think, what it really comes down to, is yourself.
Yeah.
And are you being open, honest? Do you have integrity with yourself, that when you say something, you're going to follow through, and being able to stick through that makes it much easier to be transparent, and because you can build that trust with yourself and then be able to gift that with other people and invite others in that really truly care about your best interests.
Absolutely. And the last principle, I think, for forming a foundation of integrity kind of revolves around resilience and self-respect, right? Embracing integrity, it kind of cultivates that resilience and self-respect. And by staying true to your values and your principles, you're going to develop that inner strength and a sense of self-worth. And this is a hard one because when you're stuck in the grips of addiction, your self-worth is zero, right? And so your resilience and your self-respect means that you believe more in yourself than you believe in the substance that you're trying to obtain. You're like, I know what I need. I have everything I need to become clean, sober, full-fledged recovery, and maybe even heal from this. But if we are trying to play both sides of a sport, like I'm going to play offense, defense, and then I'm going to play that on the other team as well, you're playing against yourself. I heard this once, and I've always kind of thought, at first I'm like, I don't know, man. But I was talking to an ecclesiastical leader once, and he was talking about pornography addiction specifically. And he was teaching a group of us, and he was saying that there are things that you can be 100% in. And he said, like, in this context, he was saying, viewing pornography, you can be 100% in not doing it. And I'm a firm believer you can be 100% in not using if you're willing to face some of the heavy stuff. It's the only way you're going to get through is by facing what's causing the problem, whether it's a personality disorder, whether it's a behavioral disorder, whether it's
past trauma.
Like, you have to have enough courage and strength to say, I'm done. When you take it off your plate and you eliminate it completely as a resource. I did that. I took it off the plate. I'm like, this is no longer a resource for me. Could it be? Well, yeah, I have every mechanism possible, a functioning body, a brain, everything to go find it.
Yeah.
But I took it off the plate.
As a choice.
But that meant I had to face some scary things inside there.
Yeah.
And so I believe that if you truly want to set a strong foundation, you must first and foremost build a strong sense of integrity.
Yeah.
And that is not super easy.
Yeah.
But in and of itself, it turns into a growth mindset. It turns into an understanding and awareness. And we're going to talk about this in question 2. Anything you would add or subtract from any of this?
Well, just if you're looking at the resilience, like, I'm sorry, every addict I know is extremely resilient.
Yeah, they bounce back.
They bounce back. They go from nothing to everything to nothing to everything. Like, talk about being able to, like, keep going. And being able to recognize that you have some strength in what you've done as a coping skill for addiction to keep you handling life or whatever stressors or triggers that you've had has created a very resilient person. So being able to recognize there's positives on that side. Now, how do I switch that to becoming more resilient in not giving up, having that grit to just keep fighting? Keep fighting, keep being honest, talking about your struggles, having that increased self-awareness that you're going to be open when things come up early enough, not after the fact every time, that you can have that grit in other ways.
I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. If it were easy, everyone would do it, right? But here's the thing, too, that's kind of cool about this is once you've established a level of trustworthiness, right? Personal accountability, some consistency through discipline, that transparency through your openness, and that self kind of respect turns into that reliance on your the resilience and the reliance on the path that you're taking.
Yeah.
I think that overall, integrity provides that solid foundation that is promoted by trust. And that's the result of what you want. Everyone wants to be able to become trustworthy once more.
Yeah.
And
does that mean you aren't going to make mistakes? No. But part of being able to build trust and integrity in yourself and others is being open about your struggles or about your weaknesses. That's still okay. That doesn't mean you have to be 100% perfect at all times. It's just being open to sharing, hey, I'm having a bad day. Yeah. Hey, I need some extra support here. Hey, I'm feeling lonely. And, how can I help myself there?
Absolutely. I love it. And so, I know for the individual that is listening to this, that submitted this question, I hope that gives a little bit of guidance and direction for you. And these are things that can kind of become commonplace if you keep making that next best choice.
Yeah.
Right. And the one thing you want to avoid is skipping one of these things, because I don't think you can do everything, but maybe be personally accountable. Like you have to kind of wrap your head around each of these principles forming one whole of integrity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing when you get that back and you start getting like those small gifts that maybe only you'll appreciate. Things like getting keys to the car, keys to a home, keys to an office.
Family inviting you over that has cut you out. Yeah.
You can see that I'm becoming a man, a woman, an individual of my word. And that was one thing that I've strived to, because I remember, your dad, Gary, like if the man said he's going to do something, he did it.
Always.
And it was amazing to start to see like the benefits of that, to say, I'm going to be there, or I'm going to do this, and then do it. That integrity shouts, hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So I hope that helps a little bit in that frame, but it does kind of go into the question number 2, which I thought was kind of interesting. I wanted to share with you, Marissa. And to kind of sum this down, because it was kind of a bigger question and it got kind of lost, I kind of summarized it to say, why is being true to myself so difficult now that I'm in recovery? This is an interesting one, right? Because you hear this a lot in the rooms, like, be true to thyself, be true to thine own self, right? Before we jump into this, what do you think being true to yourself looks like? Because it does have something to do with integrity we're just discussing, but to be true to yourself, it's a Shakespeare quote.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it really comes down to, that's such a big part of recovery, because we can lie to ourselves.
Very, very, very good. Yeah.
We can convince ourselves, and our brain's amazing at, trying to keep us survival. And if that means that it lies to itself to keep us, surviving, then it does. And we are really good at I can do it. I can make up an excuse for anything and convince myself that it's worthwhile, and that excuses me from something else. When back out, does it really? I mean, we have to be honest and complete with ourselves first and foremost.
I remember this kind of awakening when I first started to understand this principle. And we're going to get into some other aspects of this in a second. But I remember thinking that even though the trauma I experienced as a kid, the crazy roller coaster that was my life, through adolescence and craziness, the abuse I suffered, the scars that I have on my body because of abusive stepfathers, none of that was an excuse to use. And I remember really taking some time to think about that. I could be the world's best addict. I have every reason and excuse to be that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like you said, I have scars on my body from abusive stepdads that beat the living crap out of me.
Yeah.
And if that's not a good fuel for an addiction, I don't know what is. And so now as a 47-year-old man, could I seriously be like, well, I still need to hide from that pain by getting high or drinking? No. And there's a lot of reasons why. I want to jump into this, but does that make sense? Like, I have really good reasons and excuses to use, but they're just excuses.
Yeah.
And I think when we start looking at recovery this way, you start looking at it's just an excuse to escape something that's not going to change by whatever you're taking in. You start having your eyes open a little bit wider that maybe I should go to the source of the problem and fix it instead of hiding from it. And it's going to be scary, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to hurt a little bit.
Because that also means that your perception of the world and how you've looked at it may be wrong, which is even more difficult to come to terms with. I think I've shared many times the theory of Plato's cave.
Oh, yeah.
And, if all you've ever known, and, if you talk about the philosopher Plato had a story about family inside a cave that were tied up, men were chained up, and all they could do is look into the cave. The back and the opening of the cave was behind them. All they could do is look into the cave at the cave wall. and there was a fire in there, so that anything that happened outside of the cave was reflected through shadows on the cave wall. And that's how they saw and interpreted the world. And one of them becomes free. He gets out. He's like,
oh my gosh.
All of a sudden, to see sun, to see trees and flowers and color and things in 3 dimension, not just in a shadow figure. He was obviously dumbfounded. I mean, the whole perception changes, and he comes in and he's telling his friends that are all still chained up, hey, you've got to come outside, come outside.
Come see this.
Come see this. You need, and they're like, whatever.
They didn't believe him.
This isn't what's there. And to be able to see, like, maybe take a real switch in the way we've always saw the world or thought of the world, that even the concept of addiction is not a disease. Maybe it really is a choice. That's really difficult when you've been ingrained with understanding that you didn't have option to choose any of this.
Right.
And which means you don't have an option to choose out. So, that's difficult.
Well, and that's one of the greatest lies that we buy into, is that we don't have a choice, and we do. But I think, why is being true to myself so difficult now that I'm in recovery? And I think the first one is an aspect of what I would probably say is authenticity. Being true to yourself is crucial in recovery. And, it involves embracing your true identity, acknowledging your strengths and your weaknesses, and accepting yourself without the need for substance. So if you can start becoming authentic, the real part of you, this means that, you may come with a few different labels too. I mean, I did. I didn't know that me getting clean would all of a sudden slap a label of, attention deficit disorder on me, right? I didn't realize that. I didn't realize it would slap, a principle and characteristic of being a father and being a husband and doing all the other. I didn't know all these things. But being authentic and rising to that challenge and taking my place meant that I had to start really looking at what's causing this. What is it? It's the neglect that I suffered that convinced me that I was less than, that I wasn't loved. And so it's a hard one, being authentic with yourself and being like, man, I've got some other problems here, right?
Yeah.
And self-reflection is big. And this is kind of where I came to the understanding of being true to myself. And I got to reflect on some of the stuff that I bought into, that I was lied to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
the opportunity to reflect on my new goals, my new values, my aspirations, taking the time to understand who I was, what I truly wanted, and in inviting that in, it was insane. Self-reflection kind of guided me to make decisions that were going to align with that true path that I was finding.
Yeah.
I remember when I had that epiphany of like, wait a minute, I'm more than an addict. I am a son, I'm a brother, all these attributes. And I'm like, why in the world would I reflect on one negative aspect when there's so much more out there? So being true to yourself means it's time to take a look at yourself, a deep look at yourself.
Which sometimes, is negative, being able to look at all the maybe bad things you've done. But like you're saying, looking at all the positive and all of the good that you are, all of the talents and, amazing parts of your personality that are still part of you, that is more who you truly are than ever an addict. And being able to look at those positive things and believe them, absolutely has to happen for you to be able to move forward and let go of some of that negativity.
Yeah. Again, we talked about this in the last question, but honesty is essential to acknowledge the impact that the substances or whatnot has had on you in your life, and take responsibility for it. How in the world was I supposed to take responsibility for abuse that happened to me, right? How do I take responsibility for that? I didn't inflict that on myself.
Yeah.
But I had to take responsibility for it because it was consuming me. Does that make sense? I had to say that, this happened to me. Oh, well.
How long am I going to give it power, right?
It's almost
kind of the concept,
yeah,
right?
But it's almost hard to say because there are people out there that won't see it that way yet, and that's okay. But I had to say, I am punishing myself with this addiction for something that a stepdad did that probably doesn't even think of me, probably doesn't even remember my name. Does that make sense? Yeah. And look how much power I've given him to destroy myself. How does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so taking a deep look at yourself is like, wait a minute, what am I doing to myself that's kind of contributing to that lie that I was beaten into believing? Mm-hmm. Which is not easy. That's a concept of going to a counselor or a therapist finally and them unwrapping that bandage that you've had, on since the trauma happened, and it being crusted over and infected and the wound just reeking and horrible. And then they're like
you believing I'm unlovable.
Absolutely.
And, not worth it. Yeah.
And then it's scrubbed and cleaned and rewrapped, and you're like, holy crap, that hurt, right? And you go home and you come back, and guess what happens in therapy?
They have to do it again.
They have to change your bandages, right? And it's going to hurt. They're going to scrub it.
Scrub it again if there's still infection in deeper layers.
I remember one time I made the horrible decision to slide into second base in a softball game wearing shorts and took off about half of my shin. Yeah. And I remember the nurse that was doing the bandage changing.
Well, and all you did is you waited from, what was it, like this third inning to the end of the game without addressing it. And it got so infected.
Yeah, it was bad.
So infected.
It was bad. And I remember them taking that off and scrubbing it. And I'm like, holy mother of Troy. Like, this hurts. But eventually, guess what happened? It healed.
It healed.
And I can look at it now, and it just like I just did just now, and be like, dang, that hurt. And I can remember how bad it was and how much it sucked. But in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, I'm going to forget all about it.
And you still have your leg.
And I still have my leg.
It didn't have to be amputated because
healed.
you ignored it for so long.
Being honest with yourself extends to being honest with your support system, your families, your friends, your loved ones,
people
and then they get to be provide that valuable guidance and support to you. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of contagious.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to that integrity factor.
If you choose to surround yourself with those people that really care about your best interest.
Mm-hmm. Being true to yourself also means that you are willing to set some boundaries for yourself. And boundary setting for yourself involves like a lot of preparation and accountability, right? Yeah. It means recognizing the limits that you have and asserting that when others try to violate it. Yeah. It's about like you protecting your recovery, maintaining your health, and ensuring that your needs are met. So if you have boundaries and you allow stupid people to come into your world to use with you or to, convince you to go with them or to money exchange, all this stuff, then your boundaries need to be reestablished, reassessed. Absolutely. How important is setting boundaries when you're being true to yourself? And not that I can't hang out with that person. It's I'm not going to allow that person into my world. Yeah. What do you think?
And that's really hard. Mostly when, if you have a friend that you've used with and they're still up and down and around, and you're just recognizing, hey, maybe I'm not really safe around them.
Yeah.
They come around and hang out, and it's a little triggering. That's difficult because, a lot of people, you just have love and, you care about those people. It's not like all the years of that relationship don't mean anything by setting a boundary.
Yeah.
But I think people look at it that way, like, I owe him something because
oh my gosh,
we are longtime friends. And he's been there for me when I was struggling. I need to be there for him, or, whichever way transaction that is. And you've got to be careful with that, looking at it as a transactional thing, because it really comes down to what is most important. You have to be able to put yourself first. And that's so hard when you've failed for so long and you think that you're worthless, to be able to put yourself first and try to have a boundary like that. Mm-hmm. Because, then you hear what kind of things? Mm-hmm. Oh, you're too good for me. Oh, you think you're high and mighty. Or
holier than thou.
Holier than thou.
That happened to me when I set boundaries. All of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, Mr. Stuck Up, right?
Yeah.
Did we we got lost?
It says it's too hot.
We can just keep recording.
audio.
Yeah. Let's just, Max, it's fine.
I think it's doing
Let's just,
audio still.
Yeah, we can just keep going. So, sorry about losing the video there, guys.
Sorry.
But the audio, I believe, is still coming through. So, look at the black screen and we'll finish this off. Really, I think, Marissa, setting the boundaries, one of the most crucial things. And when I set boundaries, the loved ones that I thought supported me, they really pushed those with that holier than thou mindset and this. And even now, pushing boundaries and saying, no, I'm not allowing you, into my world. If you're bringing the chaos, if you're trying to stir the pot, of my belief system.
Or even just saying, I'm not strong enough to be around you yet. I love you and I care about our friendship and what we've been through together. I just can't be around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got to also embrace some vulnerability. And recovery often requires embracing vulnerability and being open and honest with your struggles and emotions. We just talked about that a second ago. And it does take a lot of courage to share your experiences, your fears, and your challenges, but it can also foster very deep connections with a real strong support network and provide you with understanding and encouragement. Embracing vulnerability now. We've talked about that last point in the last part. So I think you've been well documented with this. I want to spend some time on this next priority, though, and that's self-care.
Yeah.
Prioritizing self-care is essential for maintaining your recovery, people. This includes taking care of your physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
Yeah.
Engaging in activities that bring happiness, bring joy. Practice mindfulness, being able to exercise. That's why it's so important to surround yourself with positive influence. Self-care is often neglected in this process because we are typically trying to please others.
Yeah.
Better get that on the tripod before you give someone a seizure. What do you think about like self-care in the world of,
Yeah. So,
being true?
Self-care is even more difficult. Like some of the others, when you put yourself first, it feels selfish. It feels uneasy.
Max, don't worry about the camera. It's fine, brother.
It feels really uneasy and it's really difficult to handle that. But you are worth it.
Yeah.
You deserve to be in a good place. You deserve to treat yourself well so that you can be better for others in the future. But if you don't treat yourself well, if you don't learn to love yourself, you cannot give to others like they deserve.
No, it's so true. And this will be one of the most challenging aspects of your recovery is putting yourself higher on your priority list because you're going to want to you'll have this feeling of I've got to be there now for everybody because I've neglected everybody. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like if it's the classic, put your oxygen mask on before you help somebody else. Everybody, you've been indoctrinated with that through every treatment program you've been to, every therapy session. You should know this by now. This is not a new term. Put your oxygen mask on before helping anyone else. I love it when people say that and it seems like, oh, I've never heard that before. Why are we still talking about it? Because we still have the tendency to not do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, so hard to follow.
We self-sacrifice. We put ourselves in situations that are requiring more than we have capacity for, and we pay the price. Does that make sense?
And some of it is from that self-awareness. Can we really take a good evaluation of what our capacity is? What can we handle? And that's going to be different at different times, different days, and with different people. So some days you may have the capacity to engage with an old friend or somebody that, and other times you will not.
Exactly.
Having that self-awareness to say, okay, I'm not in a place I can handle this. I need a break. I need to back away. And do some self-care is important because you are worth it. 100%.
The last aspect for this, becoming more true to yourself is your development of a authentic support system. We talk about it all the time. Again, it's another one of those, oxygen quotations. You are the average of the 5 people you hang out with.
Yeah.
It's time for you to start looking at who's holding you back and who's going to catalyst you.
Who are you going to surround yourself
with? You will not be able to change if the people around you aren't willing to let you. And if they're not going to let you, then you're going to have to make some tough decisions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are you being true to yourself if you're hanging out with the people that keep you sick?
Yeah.
I had to walk away from family. And that was the most difficult thing in the world. You watched it for years, Marissa, like birthdays and stuff and on all these things. And I would take it out on you and the kids and myself. Why? Because my network, the people that I thought should love me weren't there. And I'm like, why am I investing in this so much? And it's so sad to say, but when my mom passed away, it was one of the most gracious blessings I had, because then I knew it wasn't going to come. With the surety, I knew that phone would not ring. That's hard to swallow.
Yeah.
You know?
But like you say, it's been a gift for you to be able to let go of some of those expectations, because that's what a lot of times it is those expectations that this friend or this, family member isn't going to support me the way I need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's painful. And like you said, I think you knew that, but subconsciously you struggled with it for years and years and years. Just that hope and desire that things would change and that she would call or she would engage, and just never did.
Yeah. And I still practice that today. If there are, people in my life that aren't bringing, like love, compassion, support, then I'm going to leave you behind. Does that make sense? And that sounds kind of mean and callous and very narcissistic, but on the same breath, it's like, that's what's saving my life. So if it's contrary to my beliefs, or if it's, situational issues that aren't really, I don't know, conducive to me feeling, connected and good, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be a jerk to you, but I'm also not going to let you in.
Yeah.
So,
and I think there's some people that may come across and you think are the good support system, but when maybe you set a boundary and they're disrespected by that and they get snotty, or, you know what I mean? Maybe that's a sign that they're not in a place to have that good, healthy relationship yet.
Absolutely. 100%.
And that doesn't mean you can never talk to them again. No. But right now, maybe that's a red flag that they're not ready to be on the level that you are, or the level that you need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to sum both of these up, they're kind of similar by nature. What would you say kind of wraps both of these questions together?
It's got to come down to you first.
It's you first.
And be honesty and integrity. Like, that's what you can build on, is yourself the best. Maybe you also means you've lied to yourself the best, and you believed those lies, that you've got to come clean with yourself of who you are, what you want, where you're going, and start assessing that with yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of the premise of both of these. It's not easy, but you guys, it is absolutely beautiful when you become one with yourself before one with anything or anyone else. It is the resistance to your what is that causes your suffering. If you can allow yourself to just be in these, two principles of mind, you're going to get it made. Yeah. But I'm a firm believer that relapse is not part of recovery. Never has been, never will be. That's an excuse for you not to do the hard stuff. So it doesn't have to be an option. Take it off your option plate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts when people like, weak moment, blah, blah. You didn't do anything to stop it. You didn't call anyone. You didn't invest in anyone. You didn't see the plan. You didn't have a plan. This is on you.
Yeah.
And once you kind of hit the ground, it's up to you to either get yourself back up, dust yourself off and get back in the game, or take a knee, right?
Yeah.
And that's a hard part too. Like,
it's a hard thing to assess.
And I'm sorry, we can't wait for you either, which is kind of hard. Like, we have to keep moving.
Yeah.
So a little bit of accountability goes a long way, I think, with your recovery. And I hope that those two questions have helped maybe a couple of you out there. Submit your questions. We'd love to read them live on the air or answer them off the air, whichever might feel
best for you.
You need, yeah. So, sorry about the camera situation. We'll get that figured out again and figure out what's going on, because I know you love looking at our lovely mugs here. But athletes,
however, you will get this as a podcast, and you can pass it on to others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. addictathlete.org. That's all your informational needs. And until next time, athletes, turn your mess into your message.
No guiding light. I never